Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Impact Farming Show. We are at the Advancing Women in Agriculture Conference, and I have a fantastic guest with me today. I have Julie Gunlock from the Independent Women's Forum, and she delivered a fantastic presentation today about alarmism in modern agriculture.
Yes.
So welcome, Julie.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
We're so happy to have you on the show. And you know, this topic, it's funny, when I seen it come up in the agenda, it kind of hit close to home like it would for most farmers. I mean, as Canadian producers, a producer anywhere in the world, we are under such scrutiny.
Yes.
And it doesn't need to be, and it shouldn't be that way.
Right.
So I'm so excited that there's people like you going, hello, wake up. Right. So best place to start. Can you define alarmism and talk a little bit about the presentation that you gave our ladies here today?
Sure. Well, it is this, as I characterize it, the culture of alarmism is this unending, relentless drumbeat that everything sold in the grocery store, every piece of food out there, especially affordable food, everything in the drugstore is going to kill you, harm your child, delay your child, cause some sort of learning disability. And a lot of it is tied to a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding of the modern food system. And that's both food manufacturing, but also farming. And you see a lot of fear-based messages. You see a lot of sort of questionable marketing going on out there. And you see panic on the part of industry, who is trying very hard to respond to consumer demand, but in their efforts to educate the public, sometimes they confuse them even more. So this all feeds into the culture of alarmism, and ultimately it's the consumer that suffers.
Okay. We see it so much. And, you know, farmers have not only gone from people that try and produce very safe food, which we do, we're now in a position where it seems like we just have to defend ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. And look, you know, I was showing some of the headlines and some of the news stories that are in the news, and they say things like factory farming and modern farming. They use the word modern farming as a pejorative, as a negative. Yeah. And I was trying to explain in my presentation that modern agriculture practices, automation, mechanization, and the advance of technology, and certain technologies like GMO technology, these are wonderful things. These are wonderful things. This is progress. It's improved labor on farms. It's made it a lot safer. It's been better. It's better for the earth. And so I hate to see sort of modernization and technological advancements and innovation in some ways treated as if it's a negative. It's really a positive.
Excellent. I'm glad you touched on that. And I guess really the best place to start would be, why are we here?
Yeah. Well, there's two reasons, and I focused on two main reasons. First of all, we are in an age of we are taking in so much information. It's like a fire hose, and it's very hard for consumers, mothers, women in particular. And look, when I talk about consumers, it's almost always women. 9 out of 10 women are doing the shopping for the family. Okay. And that's not just food. That's everything from food to light bulbs to the minivan. Women are the ones choosing these items. And so the fear-based marketing is largely targeting women. And so you have activists saying completely inaccurate information about farming practices and the modern food industry. You have bloggers, some well-meaning, some not well-meaning. You have celebrities. And then of course the headlines. And we all know that scary news, scary headlines get a lot more clicks than headlines offering reassuring information. Yes. So all of these things combined feed this cultural fear.
You nailed it. I mean, clickbait, is that?
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah.
I mean, great, solid information doesn't really make headlines or provide clicks.
It doesn't.
It's unfortunate. passionate.
Yeah.
So my pet peeve is, I think sometimes we forget how fortunate we are, especially in the first world country, how much we have access to safe, cheap food.
Yes.
I mean, we are so very fortunate that sometimes, and I know a lot of producers feel the same way, like we just need a reality check.
Yeah.
And that is something that I loved about your presentation. You went up there and you set the stage and you talked about the 1900s. So can you touch on that?
Yeah, so I said one of the other reasons that we have alarmism is it's sort of this epidemic of amnesia and frankly ignorance or really zero historical perspective. And I told the story of a woman named Sarah Josephine Baker, who was a health inspector in the Hell's Kitchen area of New York City in 1900. She was a real trailblazer. She was a physician, one of the few female physicians in the country, and this is in the United States. She found in this small section of New York City, now again this was tenement housing, we're talking 20 people in a small room, and very bad sanitation, very rudimentary understanding of germ therapy, germ theory. So these were, but this was only 118 years ago, and she, in her census, she did a health census, and she found that 1,500 babies, newborns, were dying every month in that particular area of New York City. Wow. So when I read about Sarah Josephine Baker, I was fascinated by her. I love to read about these sort of trailblazing women, and I just can't believe that today that we live in a time where parents literally think by feeding their child the occasional frozen pizza, or if it's a busy night and you make a packet of macaroni and cheese, that you're somehow harming your child. When 120 years ago, kids were dying at a rate of 1,500 per week in Hell's Kitchen in one small area of New York. Yeah. And so I think we really need to remind people, look folks, there's some stuff. I'm not saying we don't have to worry about anything, but to suggest that our food system is somehow, you hear words like toxic and poison and dangerous. That's insane, and we really need to push back on that narrative, because ultimately it makes people miserable, fearful, and just it makes it very difficult for people to live day to day.
I love that part of your presentation, and I think more than anything, as farmers, we get frustrated, and me as well. So when I heard you were going to be chatting about this, I really wanted to bring you on the show, because that's a narrative that is worthy of bringing to the audience, right?
It is, and also I think farmers are under attack for things like, you hear these, in my mind, horribly irresponsible things, but that farmers don't care about the earth. Modern farming and modern technology has made farming far better for the earth, and many of the innovations have allowed farmers to spray less, and yet those are the very innovations that many of these environmentalists are attacking, and actually the narrative against farmers is so shocking to me that I find it incredibly insulting. So I really think that we really need to work hard at reminding people of how hard farmers work and how much they rely on the earth. They rely on good soil. They rely on a healthy earth in order to grow their crops. So there's no reason to harm it. There's no incentive for them to harm the earth.
Yes. And I guess, many of our individuals in the audience would know the answer to this, but who is really influencing this alarmism culture?
Well, I mentioned the media earlier, but I will say activists. For instance, there's an organization called the Environmental Working Group, and every year they release a list called the Dirty Dozen list, which says certain vegetables and fruits have higher levels of pesticides. Yeah. That's false. It's ridiculous. My child would have to eat 1,500 strawberries to reach any kind of toxic level of residue. So it's insane. As a mother, I should buy what's affordable. I should be able to choose something that's affordable, not base it on some silly science that EWG puts out. So there are these activist organizations that push this narrative. It scares people. It creates headlines. It's a big cycle. It's a self-supporting cycle where the activists say scary things and the media wants to report on it. And ultimately, again, the consumers are the ones paying the price.
And it's so unfortunate too, because credibility, and you also talked about professional designation. You chatted a little bit about that. Now with internet, it's a blessing.
Yes.
But the individuals that have the information and should be referenced for those articles aren't necessarily the ones that are being consulted with.
That's right. It frustrates me when people have fears of, for instance, farming, but then they never talk to farmers. The New York Times a couple years ago had a big conference on the future of farming, and didn't invite one farmer to be. Now that's the New York Times, so they invited fancy restaurateurs and food writers, but not one single farmer. I wrote about that. Not one single farmer was on their panel, and so I think farmers are often left out of the conversation about farming, and so it frustrates me. I think that if you have a question about your child's vaccination, ask a doctor, not the woman who does your hair. If you have a question about farming, ask a farmer. If you have questions about pesticides, you can ask a farmer. You could ask a toxicologist. You could ask a scientist in your that you may know. But really relying on experts in a field, it's important. These are important issues, and you have to choose your sources wisely.
So well said. So for our audience, many of them are just doing an amazing job of bringing safe food to a growing population. And again, so many people are frustrated and they don't know quite what to do. What would be your advice to farmers that are watching that feel like they're under attack?
Well, I would say you need to fight back. Absolutely, don't give up. And I think there are ways to fight that are respectful, where you can really engage people. I have suggested get on social media as much as possible, create your own presence there, but also engage. On Facebook, for instance, there's a lot of farming chat groups where you can offer information. So I think it's really important that you get involved in social media and that you engage, tell your own story, and again, become a resource for people who have questions.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. This topic, as it probably does for many farmers, kind of gets me a little bit riled up.
Well, me too. Someone called me on Twitter a fireball after that presentation. So
that's a good thing.
I think that is officially fired up when someone calls you a fireball. So.
That's a compliment.
Yeah, I was happy. I was happy with that.
So, thank you so much for joining us. I know you have a book.
Yeah.
Before we wrap the interview up, can you tell us a little bit more about your book?
Yeah, I wrote this book a couple years after having my first child. It's called From Cupcakes to Chemicals: How the Culture of Alarmism Makes Us Afraid of Everything and How to Fight Back. My next book is going to be a one-word book because that's a long title that I always stumble over, and it's my own book. And I write for a lot of publications: Wall Street Journal, New York Post, a bunch of publications in the U.S. And you can find all my writing at iwf.org.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I know the audience, they're going to love hearing from you, and
Great.
I hope that they connect with you as well.
Great. Thanks so much.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.